I think that any communist state that takes form in America is going to have communist values, or American values rather. It's going to be based on the history of our country, the Constitution. I think it would be a Christian communist state, and I think that we can learn a lot from China and from the Soviet Union. Want some smelly, freakish, blue-haired, who knows, like Starbucks worker taking my order at 7 a.m. when I'm trying to wake up. Like, just give me my order. Put that person to work on an oil rig or something. Do something. Do something useful. And if you can't do that, then sucks. But we need an economy that is oriented around human prosperity, not around like degenerate freaks expressing their identity, handing me a latte.
Hello, everyone from the capitalist dystopia of the United Kingdom. Now, in this capitalist dystopia, I've been working like a dog the last week and a bit. I think this is my 8th video I've edited and recorded in 9 days. When you're watching this video, I am probably in Spain, and hopefully I'm going to try and make it a shorter one because I'm just so burnt out from making all of these videos. But I did want to talk about this, and I've been procrastinating hard. It's about 1:30 a.m. and I actually went out all evening just so I didn't have to work. But yeah, I'm going to be talking about the incoherent political ideology that is MAGA communism, conservative communism, whatever. It seems to be a fringe thing online, but I thought it'd be fun to talk about. Basically, it became a thing like a year ago with people like Haas and Jackson Hinkle all talking about MAGA communism. And basically, it meshes in two things, like this very anti-Western contrarian sentiment you're seeing online. I made a video a while ago talking about like the people who support Russia in its war against Ukraine. And I basically talked about them being contrarians, but also only caring about bad things when America does it, right? Because they don't care about bad things and other countries do it. And they actually like bad things other countries do if it is in opposition to America, like Russia, for example, and what they're doing to Ukraine. And it also blends in this idea that Trump is for like the forgotten working man. And also in that, Trump's foreign policy on paper claims to be like more isolationist. He talks a lot about how he could end the war. And these people have revisionist history about the Trump administration, acting like he didn't actively carry on and expand all the wars that Obama was involved in himself. These guys convinced themselves that Donald Trump was somehow like anti-US imperialism, despite putting in his government like every neocon who was responsible for the Iraq war. This MAGA communism is just like right-wing, socially conservative, with maybe some lip service to white working class people, but doesn't even include all working class people. And I actually have a chart that Jackson Hinkle posted on his Twitter talking about what MAGA communism is for. Let's have a look at this and you guys can tell me what you think. So, reindustrialization of America, dismantle big tech, end foreign intervention, end globalist imperialism, abolish the CIA, FBI, NSA, drain DOJ swamp, pardon January 6th protesters, pardon Assange and Snowden, extend free speech to social media, land reform, dismantle big agriculture, unite with China on BRI, ban Antifa street terrorism from a communist group apparently, expand stable high-yielding energy oil, nuclear, leave NATO, mission infrastructure program, declare major energy resources as public commodities, banking in the hands of the people, economic bill of rights, cut military budget, protect Second Amendment, cut foreign aid and democracy promotion, no open borders, dismantle MIC, promote made in America products, nationalize big tech, literacy movement, patriotic education, end woke academia, end subsidization of monopolies, remove red tape, subsidize gyms in every community, lower taxes, deport Bush family, Clinton family, Obama, Pompeo, Bolton to the ICC, destroy Open Society Foundation, WEF, IMF, World Bank, Gates, Ford, Clinton foundations, dismantle Big Pharma, destroy duopoly, DC Uniparty, end debt slavery, imprison opioid fentanyl networks, protect minors from sexualization, dismantle secret societies, arrest George Soros, Bill Gates, Fauci, and all Epstein associates and criminals. Now, if you've heard that list and you find stuff in there that you might agree with, like arrest Obama and give him to the International Criminal Court, or land reform, or stuff that has been done in communist-run countries, that's kind of the point. It's basically like incoherent. So it's talking about like a lot of economic stuff to do with communism. In theory, it's talking about that, but then it kind of goes against it because as communists ourselves and as anti-capitalists, why would we promote further industrialization in regards to things like oil as well? Capitalism is destroying the planet. A developed country like America doesn't have to rely on the same resources that have been destroying the planet. But then you have obviously the dog whistles to the right wing, talking about sexualizing minors, talking about ending woke academia, pardoning January 6th protesters, no open borders, communists advocating for closed borders, right? In America in 2023. Like I said, it's an incoherent version of conservative communism, I guess. But the thing is, right, if someone in charge of running some sort of Communist Party of America, which assumes power, starts doing these things, you wouldn't trust them to actually follow through on actually doing any of the, I guess, things we might agree with here, like, I don't know, nationalizing big tech. And the MAGA part is just literally little dog whistles to the right wing, because MAGA do not approve of communism. A lot of people who love MAGA love individualism and libertarianism. They wouldn't agree with the big old government coming in and breaking up monopolies, taking land from like big landowners and giving it to the people, because they fundamentally do not support that ideology. Loads of Americans, and loads of American conservatives in particular, hate the government and want to be left alone. So if you're going to sell them these things based on what you think is like, I don't know, some sort of working class sentiment, I hate to break it to you, but they're thoroughly brainwashed with individualist ideology, and they're just not going to accept a lot of these things, even if they like a couple of them. You're really not going to sell American conservatives on the idea of government running everything just because you said you will prosecute Obama, end woke academia, and I don't know, pardon January 6th protesters. But we've seen videos of these MAGA communists going to actual right-wingers, tentatively agreeing on certain things, but then of course a right-winger not agreeing with communism because they hate communism. And they're talking about things like prosecuting Soros, right? American conservatives don't see the difference between Soros and communism because they're anti-Semites, right? They believe communism is a plot by George Soros and the Jews to destroy Western civilization, right? Just because you say stuff about wokeness, they're not going to forget that. It's seriously stupid on paper, like we're reading here, but when you delve into the architects of this philosophy, it makes even less sense. If we're going to try and take this as a serious political ideology, they believe what Donald Trump captured was this anti-establishment, anti-elite sentiment. People knew something was wrong with the system. People just couldn't pinpoint what it was. So then you have Donald Trump coming along and saying, I know what it is. Vote for me, I'll drain the swamp of elites that have ruined your life, and also the swamp that allow immigrants to come in and take your jobs, right? Because we all know Trump's populist message wasn't a coherent economic one. It was just like a general, you know, your life is bad because of the people in power, both sides kind of, and vote for me and I'll make it better. But also it's bad because of them letting immigrants through at the border, right? It is inherently xenophobic and racist. Now, the one thing I will say is that although MAGA, America First, whatever, that is racist and xenophobic, it's also important to recognize that people are brainwashed into this racism, right? I don't personally believe in free will, and I think people are products of their environment. If you grow up in a very conservative Christian part of America, you're just going to be like a massive racist who is pretty much primed to support fascism, right? That is not inherently your fault, and we can recognize that without saying that we don't even need to challenge that. We just have to say, oh, you hate George Soros, I hate George Soros too because he's a wealthy person. You hate him because he's a Jewish billionaire who you think's running global communism. Let's make an alliance to throw him in prison or something, right? It's just something I don't think that holds much water, because yes, you can advocate for stuff that benefits like everyone, right? Everyone has material needs that need to be met, and you can push a message based on that. But saying that communism and Make America Great Again are compatible is just ridiculous, because you're ignoring a lot of the strains of what makes, you know, Trump supporters. They aren't anti-capitalist. Trump is a capitalist to his core. He's a billionaire, ex-president. He is the elite himself. He's always palled round with the elite. He's always been in bed with the elite. Just because he's against the Republican establishment doesn't mean he's really challenging that in any significant way, especially now after he has served a term in office where he fundamentally didn't change anything, but his supporters really don't care. In my mind, there isn't really anything that underpins MAGA anymore because it's just all unhinged conspiracy theories, right? The reason they hate the elite is because they believe they're all like satanic and they'd ruin an American life through woke agenda to indoctrinate your kids, to make them turn away from Christian values and stuff like that. They seemingly don't really care about the economic stuff anymore. Like, sure, you can argue bad education, poor like material conditions, make people more inclined to go down the conspiracy theory route. But I don't think you're going to reach these people by saying, oh, wouldn't communism be better? And especially if you're branding it with communism, because these people hate communists, right? And yes, they made this big list of all the policies, and I'm sure some people on MAGA would agree with them, but also they wouldn't agree with the big government stuff. They hate the government. They don't trust the government. And if you say, well, it will be different this time, it will be an American communist government, they will say, oh, well, like Stalin's Russia, like Pol Pot in Cambodia, like Mao's China. We don't like that. We don't want that here. I just want my private property rights. I just want my individual wealth. I want the government to leave me alone, and I don't want to pay taxes, right? That seems to be a fundamental core in every conservative in America, saying to them, oh, actually, the government is going to redistribute land. The government is going to break up all these monopolies that screw you over. Although they might actually agree with that, they won't like you doing it. And as they see it, like destroying American business and capital and stuff like that, because neoliberalism has brainwashed so many of us. So I don't really see this ideology making much sense to people. But I'm only talking about this again because it's come up recently on Twitter, because Jackson Hinkle went on Tim Pool's show to talk about MAGA communism. Now, if you go on Jackson Hinkle's Twitter page, he's literally just simping for Russia, Iran, China. He's simping for everyone who doesn't like the West. There's no one he won't simp for. He's talking about like glory to the Wagner Group and stuff like that. This guy fundamentally supports fascists alongside like basically anyone who doesn't like the West. Like ideologically, people opposed to it, like Saudi Arabia. He likes Iran. He likes Russia. He likes all these countries. There's nothing he won't support if he can't view it as anti-Western. Now, he went on Tim Pool's show to make a case for MAGA communism. So let's just look at two clips I've got here.
In the future, man, I'm talking like very soon, there's not going to be a counter. You're going to walk in to the kiosk, you're going to hit the buttons, and then it's going to go order 17. And then you're going to walk over and it's going to open up and the food's going to slide out.
I don't want some smelly, freakish, blue-haired, who knows, like Starbucks worker taking my order at 7 a.m. when I'm trying to wake up. Like, just give me my order, put that person to work on an oil rig or something, do something useful, and if you can't do that, then sucks. But we need an economy that is oriented around human prosperity, not around like degenerate freaks expressing their identity, handing me a latte that they didn't even do anything.
But I don't know that has to do with AI takeover.
Oh yeah, it does.
I mean, like the dudes who were working there,
AI takeover.
But the people working there were not like you're describing. It was like a regular dude, and it's just like I don't interact with him though.
His labor is better used elsewhere.
Yeah, I think the issue though is there's a finite amount of better use elsewhere labor. So when we automate away all the low skill jobs, what are you going to do with all these immigrants? What are you going to do with all these high school students? They're going to be locked in the Neuralink pod eating bugs, and they're going to be like, life is good.
I think the answer to that is A, having a shorter work week. I mean, you don't really need people working 40 or 80 hours a week, as so many are, to make this country run. You could have way more free time for the average American. That American that has that free time, I mean, I'd hope most people, God-fearing people, family-oriented people, are going to start new businesses. I mean, it's what's happening in China right now. They've got more millionaires than ever before. They got more billionaires than ever before, more people being lifted out of poverty, and their country's not going down a path of social degeneracy and lunacy and chaos like we are here.
So I think that clip there perfectly sums up the incoherence of MAGA communism. So he's talking about automation and AI taking away people's jobs, and he's saying, well, that's a good thing because I don't want some blue-haired freak at Starbucks and social degenerate serving me my latte because I don't want to interact with people like that. So that's a good thing, and their labor can be used better elsewhere. And apart from, saying bad stuff about degenerates or whatever, AI automation is not something that's incompatible with communism, because with communism, we want to create a world which is self-sustaining. We don't want people to be under the boot of capitalism. We don't even want people to work, right? So as many jobs as possible being taken over by robots to do for us, that's a good thing, right? And he's saying our labor can be used better elsewhere. So yeah, I agree with that as well. Like if we automate service jobs and then humans do the important ones like maintaining the AI robots, becoming doctors, doing jobs for the public of the nation. Yeah, that's a better use of time in my opinion. But then he goes on to say that like, yeah, the work week will be shorter. And that's not something I disagree with either, because people shouldn't have to work 40 hours a week in pointless jobs that just benefits the capitalist class, right? That's fine as well. But what we want to do as communists is keep reducing the hours people need to work to as minimal amount as possible. If we need workers to still sustain certain industries, then everyone should do that based on their own skills, and together we can collectively work to make humanity prosperous, right? But then he goes to say, what would they do with the free time? Like he talks about the free time being used for human prosperity, and then says not about like exploring your identity and stuff like that. And then says in the free time that people now save so they can spend time with their loved ones, pursue their passion maybe with their free time. He says, no, these God-fearing people should start businesses. Is that what we want as communists? We want people to not be under the boot of the capitalist class. We want them to be free to start their own businesses. Where what? They will employ people who need jobs and then they will become capitalists themselves. How is that compatible with communism, right? If you're talking about someone starting, I don't know, some very niche thing that they're very skilled in and they can sell that to people without exploiting other people's labor as a passion or something, that's one thing, right? To say that we want people to not work as much for corporations so they can start small businesses and exploit the labor of others, that's ridiculous. And then he goes on to say, well, look at China, isn't that a good example where there's more millionaires and billionaires than ever? In communism, what we want is less people to work for Starbucks so they can do their own thing at home, be entrepreneurs, and then become millionaires and billionaires. So there you're seeing the incoherence of it, right? You're seeing stuff which communists would agree with, saying that, yes, the development of technology and AI should mean more people working less and eventually not working at all unless it's absolutely necessary. And the free time they have will be used to pursue their passions and just enjoy life on planet Earth. But to MAGA communists, it's actually about pursuing profit by exploiting others so we can be like China and have millionaires and billionaires more than ever. Again, absolutely incoherent here, because basically what he's trying to make an argument for is the Chinese system is better. Let's be more like China, not that he actually wants some form of communism. Now, let's go on to another clip. Let's just hear him talk about his version of communism a bit more.
What is the value of communism?
Orienting government and the economy for the public good.
Yeah, but I think that's like an oversimplification.
Well,
or
you
idealistic.
said simply that's what it is. I think that any communist state that takes form in America is going to have communist values, or American values rather. It's going to be based on the history of our country, the Constitution. I think it would be a Christian communist state, and I think that we can learn a lot from China and from the Soviet Union. But you look at China today; their economy is outpacing ours. It's gonna beat ours totally, probably within the next 5 to 10 years. You know, Europe is going down, the U.S. is going down. China lifted 845 million people out of poverty in the last 40 years. I think that we shouldn't be China, but I think we can learn things from China and the Soviet Union and other countries that have done it successfully.
You seriously can't take any self-described communist seriously if he's saying that an American communist state should be based on the Constitution, Christianity, and American values. Because any communist state that exists in America would have to literally completely uproot the American system of government, including the US Constitution. Because a constitution written by slave owners for the wealthy is not something to abide your communist society with. And what are even American values? Like settler colonialism, imperialism, capitalism. Like, these aren't things that are redeeming. If you don't think this is ridiculous, think about Israeli communism, right? Israeli patriotic communism. That's what you're arguing for here, because if Israel went communist tomorrow, it's still going to be occupying Palestine. If America goes communist tomorrow, it's still occupying native lands. It's still occupying Puerto Rico. It's still occupying Hawaii, Guam, right? That's American values right there. So an American communist state cannot really exist if you're a communist. Sure, you can talk about some sort of like general communist government over American territory and maybe land back at the same time, right? Giving land back to the natives, allowing Guam, Hawaii, Puerto Rico independence from what used to be America. And then once the issues like that have been resolved, developing the rest of America to become a communist nation. But it wouldn't be based on Christianity, manifest destiny, and stuff that George Washington and the founding fathers came up with in like the late 1700s, right? It's just incompatible. Combined with all the stuff he's saying about small businesses and millionaires and billionaires, this guy doesn't want communism. At best, he wants some sort of Chinese communist management of the American economy with more social conservatism and ending what he sees as Western degeneracy, right? But that's not communism. So yeah, that is the incoherence of MAGA communism, and it actually outlines a lot of my problems with a couple different like facets of ideology. Like, I don't think nationalism has much of a place with communism. I realize nationalism has its place with communist revolutionary movements like Vietnam, for example. But I think when you actually become in charge of a nation state, nationalism really undermines communism, which in my opinion should always be internationalist. So this guy saying in his like MAGA manifesto it should be closed borders communism just is something that is pretty laughable to me and should be based on American Christian values again. I don't think that'll work very well in the long term, but like I said, it's like having patriotic Israeli communism, patriotic Northern Ireland communism. It makes no sense. Communism should be anti-imperialism. If you're going to be an American communist, you can't be pro-imperialism by still advocating for a nation state that is fundamentally imperialist in its own landmass, like Israel, US, Canada, New Zealand, Northern Ireland, right? Just doesn't make sense. And also these people are contrarian grifters. Maybe they were once communists, but communists don't see all the terrible countries around the world and the terrible capitalist countries in the world and simp for them just because they're not the United States, right? Or simp for them because they're standing up to the United States. This guy keeps simping for Putin and Russia. If you are a communist, you do not simp for a capitalist in bed with oligarchs, right? How can any self-respecting communist who's praising the Soviet Union also praise Putin's Russia? Putin himself, who pursued an education system which makes people anti-communist. A guy who is firmly against communism, right? This guy constantly simps for that. So yeah, MAGA communism will not work. Conservatives are never going to support it. MAGA conservatives, because of the big government stuff, right? And then actual communists are not going to support it because it's some sort of weird Western chauvinist authoritarian capitalism. So yeah, MAGA communism makes no sense. That's my opinion. Let me know what you guys think.